Welcome back to Answers in First Enoch, episode 40, and this one is explosive. Hopefully this will really clarify things for many out there who've had many questions. Enoch charted the course of the sun over every day, all 364 days of the year. Get that? That is the Bible calendar. There is no leap year, no change whatsoever, any year, ever. Doesn't happen. A feast day, if it's on a Wednesday this year, it's on a Wednesday the next year of the same day of the calendar. It doesn't change. Obviously, the Roman calendar does, and we have to reconcile it every year. It's a major mess, no doubt. Enoch does warn in the last days the calendar will change in ways. In fact, even the course of the sun and the moon. He warns of that. Now, we don't know where we are in that time-wise, but we're close if nothing else. It may not be possible, however, to completely reconcile this at this point, and some try, and we see them using measures they can't use because they're not scientific. What we can do, though, is in this video, we can chart Enoch's course of the sun. The sun moves, note, not the earth, by the way. That's what he saw. This video will only deal with Enoch's charting and observation. That's what it's about. Don't try to debate whether you agree with Enoch or not yet, because in the next video, we're going to vet this some. No, we're not going to spend 100 videos vetting the course of the sun. There's some out there who may wish to do that, and that's fine. That's their channel. This is ours. We're going to do it our way. But we certainly could. There's enough data out there that you could spend that kind of time. However, we'll apply a general test next, and it'll be clear enough. Try to debate that before we even release it? Well, be muted, period. Our channel, our rules, no debate in ignorance. Did you hear me? I said no debate in ignorance. We've taken on debate for 6 years, folks, and we crush it all the time. So the next video, we're going to test this, and the one after that, we're going to cover the moon, which Enoch is very clear on this. You'll see. He agrees with Jubilees and the whole of Scripture, in fact. Again, we'll go there completely, and we'll show you his words, and we'll vet that. He'll set some rules first now, and then we're going to go ahead and get to an animated charting over 12 months of the course of the sun, which is super cool. This will make sense to many. Verse 1, chapter 72, open your book of First Enoch. The book of the courses of the luminaries of the heaven, the sun, moon, and stars, essentially. The relations of each according to their classes, their dominion, and their seasons, according to their names and places of origin, and according to their months, which Uriel, the holy angel, understand where he gets his data from. This is from an archangel, folks. So who's reliable? An archangel or a modern so-called scientist who's steeped in the occult and only knows how to propagate the occult? I know who we go with. You have to decide for yourself. So Uriel, the holy angel, the archangel, who was with me, who is their guide, showed men, and he showed me all their laws exactly as they are, and how it is with regard to all the years of the world and unto eternity. Pretty clear there. Till the new creation is accomplished, which dureth till eternity. That's the day of final judgment, meaning this still stands today, folks. Now, Enoch does warn, and I think we'll cover that maybe in the next video, the one after, but he does warn that things will begin to get a little off course in the very, very end. He does say that. And actually, when you read Revelation, you're seeing that because you see the sun and the moon disappear, you see the stars fall. There's a lot going on there. And maybe he means that time, likely he does, though he could just mean as we're approaching it, even in our age, we're starting to see things aren't quite aligning 100%. Don't know, but interesting, very fascinating. Verse 2, and this is the first law of the luminaries. I repeat, the first law of the luminaries. Did you hear that? The first law of the luminaries. The luminary, the sun, has its rising. Hello! What's the first law of the luminaries? The sun rising. Got that? That is the first law of the calendar. Period. There's really no other way to view that. But he's going to say that over and over again. Don't you worry. So the sun has its rising in the eastern portals of the heaven, and its setting in the western portals of the heaven, which we represent here. Did you just read that, though? Enoch says over and over and over and over and over and over again, the day, the year, the month, in this chapter, 72, begin with the sun, never with the moon, period. It is the first law, as it is first, according to Enoch. You'll see. It's also first in the creation account, because light was created first, called day. Hello? How can scholars ignore that? Well, because they propagate a paradigm of Pharisees, and they don't know how to read. I don't know how you can you see that Yahuwah called it day, and then say, oh, but that was night. Well, so Yahuwah's wrong? Really? That's a problem. He describes 12 portals, 6 in the east here, from which the sun and also the moon, he'll tell you, we'll see that in a minute, rises. So they both rise through these portals, and 6 in the west. Though, by the way, the moon has an erratic course, and he'll rebuke that, in fact, which is why it's not really to be the measure for the beginning of the day, the year, the month, the week, any of that. Okay, so there's 6 in the west where they set. But there is a return journey in between. See that space in between there? Many do not account for that, especially time-wise, and they misunderstand Enoch. But we'll get there. Verse 3, and I saw 6 portals in which the sun rises, and 6 portals in which the sun sets. We just saw that already. And the moon rises and sets in these portals. So there you go. So the moon does the same, although again, the moon has a really erratic course, and sometimes it even doubles back. I mean, there's some weird things about its course. It's okay. It's the moon. It's what it's supposed to do. It's just not to be used as a measure for the start of the day, the week, the month, or the year. That's just the fact. And the leaders of the stars and those whom they lead. So we drew this out, not necessarily perfectly. We didn't observe it. We weren't there. Enoch did, and we're trying to really map out his words here. But this is a pretty good representation of Enoch and what he observed that will lead to understanding basically what he's saying here. Many out there are trying to teach Enoch without doing this, and they don't get it. Not because they're not smart people, and not because they're not trying. Of course they are, but because they don't take the time to really chart this out and really follow what he says and not add to it and not take away from it. This is a problem in reading all of Scripture, and we see this all the time where things are applied from paradigms, a mindset steeped in a paradigm which is false if we tested it, right? So let's not do that. Let's just take Enoch's words here and map them out and see what it comes to, okay? So the day beginning with the moon is a perfect example of that. It never does in the whole of Scripture, ever. You will never find a Scripture where the day started with the moon. There's not one single one. And no, the feasts in Leviticus 23, the fact that 3 of the 7 start with sunset, yes, they do. But did you realize 4 of them start with the sunrise? Hello. I mean, it just doesn't work. And 2 of those, or actually all 3 of those, have and we've created charts, and we've dealt with these. They actually specify that the day does not begin at sunset in those passages. It's very clear. Leviticus later tells you that atonement starts at the 9th. At sunset and ends at the 10th at sunset, which means the day just changed. You have 2 days, 9 and 10, yet only a half of each. Well, that means that they changed in the middle at sunrise. And really, the 7 days of unleavened bread do the same and have to do the same. The Jews actually add to the calendar in order to try to force their lunar Babylonian calendar, and that's false. But we've covered this, and we'll point you to those videos later. Now notice Enoch likes to reiterate so that his words can't be taken out of context. Very smart. You'll see us do that on this channel. We get criticized for that sometimes, but who cares? We're trying to teach here. We're trying to make sure people understand. And we don't care. If we say something twice, we say it. So what? 6 in the east and 6 in the west, and all following each other in accurately corresponding order. See, this is a scientific orderly system, not the chaos of modern scientism, which is utter nonsense in so many ways, but we're going to get there next video a little, just a little. We may have some other videos on that coming soon. Also, many windows to the right and left of these portals. Now, we represent these with the flames, as you will see. These heat or cool the sun depending on the season. He'll tell you that in a minute. These are located in the firmament, which, well, no man has actually entered into space. Not in any vehicle built by man. It's never happened, and we're not going to go into all of that in this video. But check it out. You really should research that if you have not. No one has ever reached it except Enoch among men. Understand that which makes him the only scientific observer among men who wrote Scripture. Obviously, Yahuwah and Yahusha did, but they're using men, the angel of the presence, and men to record these things. Those are the scribes. They aren't the scribes. So the angels know this as well, and this is an archangel who taught this to Enoch, so he knew. Discredit him? Well, because of stupid science, really? No, they never will. Verse 4, and this is critical. What does it say? And first. Got that? We all know that first means this is the beginning of what period are they talking about here? You'll see the year, the month, and the day specifically. Obviously, the week would follow the same. However, and first, there goes forth the great luminary named the sun. First, the sun. The year here, as well as the day and month, begin with the rising of the sun, period. There is no debate on that. There never has been. Enoch never says otherwise, by the way, and we hear from people all the time, oh, but Enoch says, no, here's his words. Read them for yourself. We can all figure this out, and you can see that he's being misrepresented by others, perhaps. And his circumference is like the circumference of the heaven. Wow. But it's not 92 million miles away. We're going to cover that a little next, because that is one of the dumbest things modern science has ever eluded. I mean, it's a theory, and it is a very stupid one. We'll show you. And he is quite filled with illuminating and heating fire. So it's powered by the windows of these gates, basically. The 12 windows, the one on each side, as you see on the screen. Now, this is super critical. Many see that Enoch references 18 parts to the day and night. And then they'll claim that, that means that a full day in Enoch's time was 18 hours, basically, in the day back then. And that doesn't equate to anything. And it's not what he says here. Or they'll say, an hour used to be an hour and a third. No, it didn't. That's not true either. Both of these are missing how Enoch begins this detail we're about to read here, where he defines that there's a time that he's not counting in that. He still requires a 24-hour day for all of his math, especially 364 days. You can't get to 364 days on 18-hour days. It's nonsense. It never works. And it basically says that Enoch doesn't know what he's talking about. But yet he did. He observed it. And one can never say otherwise. He did not view a day as any less than 24 hours, and an hour as anything less than an hour or more. Neither case. Didn't happen. That's not what it says here. It's just not there. Those are faulty assumptions. But let's read his words, because this is how he starts this whole chapter, where he is going to tell you, basically the course of the sun every day of the year for 364 days. And again, there's no way it could work on an 18-hour day And there's no way that an hour is an hour in a third. It just doesn't work. Verse 5, the chariot on which he ascends, the wind drives. So this isn't a physical chariot. The sun doesn't sit in a chariot like, an Egyptian pharaoh or something. That's a nonsensical view, and that's not what he's saying. There's some that attempt that, by the way, to ridicule Enoch. Oh, the sun has a chariot. No, the sun is powered by the wind. Where? Okay? Understand this. And the sun goes down. Okay, so where's that? Well, those are the west gates where it sets. So this means the western gate, right? So we know the chart from the western gate, from the heaven, and returns through the north in order to reach the east. Okay, so what is he talking about there? This is a journey many do not account for as the sun sets, but never truly does, of course. We know that the sun always moves. Enoch says the sun's always moving 24 hours a day. So we can't then take his words out of context here. We need to understand this concept. So no, the earth doesn't move. The sun moves. That's what he's saying. And so there's a period where it goes from the west gate, where it's considered as setting, to where it rises in the east gate. And there it's assisted by the wind, by a chariot of wind, which assists it, not only to go from the west to the east, but also it changes direction at the end of certain months, most months, in fact. And that's why we see the change in temperature and seasons, etc. So let's continue. And is so guided that he comes to the appropriate portal and shines in the face of heaven. Now, this chariot is important because Enoch will demonstrate that it will assist the sun to change course, to change gates, basically, throughout the year at the end of the months. That's when it changes. And these match the seasons and temperatures that we see around the world, even in the north and south pole, the equator, and the northern and southern hemispheres. Now, we're going to deal with that a little bit in the next video with some data that will make sense. Don't try to debate it on this video. You'll be muted. We're just not going to play along with debate in ignorance. We haven't even released that video yet. Hello. So, our channel, our rules. Enoch charts the course from the rising of the sun in the east gate to the west gate where it sets. And then the moon as well does the same thing, follows the same, though its course is a little erratic, so it's a little different, but it generally, this is what it does. And he's going to show you what he calls a total of 18 hours, but it's just from the west gate to the east gate. There's another 6 hours there. See, that's not the full day. We cannot forget the return from the west back to the east for a total of 6 hours. Now, obviously, that would be attributed to the sun or the moon, proportionate to that particular month, of course. It wouldn't be 3 hours and 3 hours necessarily. So, he will explain this, actually, and we'll see. And now Enoch begins. We'll use this here to start this first portion, explain it a little, and then we'll start the animation here in a few minutes. Verse 6, in this way he rises in the first month in the great portal, which is the fourth. So the fourth portal is the greatest because it's when the year starts, the year begins. Those 6 portals in the east. Remember, this is the Hebrew year. The year starts as well as the month and the day now, at the rising of the sun. The sun rising, not setting. And in the fourth portal, that is the rising portal in the east, that's sunrise, and it is the beginning of Enoch's chart, period. There's never, ever any discussion to be had on the moon starting either of those measures. And in that fourth portal, from which the sun rises in the first month, are 12 window openings. Now, we render these on screen as best we can. We didn't see them, again, Enoch did, but these are pretty good. From which, now we know, because we mentioned them before, from which proceed a flame when they are opened in their seasons. So they're fueling the sun, essentially, powering it as far as the intensity of its heat, depending on the season, obviously. Makes perfect sense. Now we begin our simple animation of the course of the sun according to 1st Enoch, chapter 72. This is Enoch's observation of the sun, and in the next video we will conduct some testing of this. Not this one, the one after, that's what I said. And then we'll cover the moon, not this episode. Don't even try to debate either of those here. Jumping the gun, not even knowing our view, because we haven't covered those yet. But we are going to next. No debate in ignorance here, however. Our channel, our rules. Wait for the next, and we will test this out. Now, we are not going to start that testing in comments on this video. I'm just not going to do it, so here we go. The course of the sun, according to the eyewitness account record, science by definition, from the observer, the first great prophet Enoch. Will this vet? Next video. Let's understand what he records first, because it's detailed, and it's going to take a whole video just to do that. There's a lot of confusion on this today, and there really shouldn't be if we just read Enoch straight for what he says, and we don't inject our paradigms that we've been taught in science class, or we've been taught by scholars who can't read many times. He's very direct, and he's very detailed. It's hard to miss this, really. We'll read from Enoch 72 from here. While on screen, we're going to show you an animation of the course of the sun for all 12 months of the year. We'll follow this through all 364 days. Let's begin now. Abib, the first Hebrew month, the start of the year. Abib 1, mid-March essentially, and the month goes mid-March to mid-April on our Roman calendar, roughly. That's what we see and needs to be reconciled each year. It changes on the Roman calendar. It never changes on the Hebrew calendar, which is always consistent year in and year out. Now, we already know the sun begins in the center, in the fourth portal. We just read that before. Are these portals perfectly positioned that we drew? Well, we didn't observe this. Enoch did, however, but this is a pretty good representation. Verse 8. When the sun rises. Oh, wait, what? Oh, you mean it starts when the sun rises. Yes, exactly. In the heaven, he comes forth through the fourth portal 30 mornings in successions, 30 days in this month, and sets accurately in the fourth portal in the west of the heaven. Understand, Hebrew months have 30 days. There are 4 months of the year. At the end of each quarter, you'd add one, what he calls an intercalary day. So one day at the end of each quarter. So it's 30, 30, 31, 30, 30, 31, 30, 30, 31, 30, 30, 31. There you go. So he comes forth through that fourth portal 30 mornings in succession and sets accurately in the fourth portal in the west. So understand, he is rising in the fourth portal, but he's also setting in the fourth portal. And understand that then there's that portion of the day in between the west and the east gate, and that's where the sun shifts at the end of most months to a different portal. And that's how we get the change of the seasons. Verse 9. And during this period, the day becomes daily longer, and the night nightly shorter to the 30th morning, consistent with science. They were just even as you will at the end. You'll see. The last day of the year is the spring equinox. We'll get there. The true one, by the way, not the fixed one on the Roman calendar, which is unscientific by any measure. They're not really, they're just attributing a day each year that's close, but they're not actually trying to find the equinox. Many people try to use that data, and the data is just not good. It's from the start, so they won't find it. Verse 10, on that day, the day is longer than the night by a ninth part. Now, man, does he get detailed here, right? And the day amounts exactly to 10 parts, and the night to 8 parts. Now, that's 18 hours, right? Or 18 parts of the day, but from the east to the west gates only. See that? That's what it says. Now you must then add the 6 hours of sun and moon proportionately to whichever their measure is for that particular month for the return trip from the west gate then back to the east gate. And that's not there in that math. It's assisted by a chariot of the wind, right? And so there are multiple things there. And again, that's where it changes course sometimes too into another gate at the end of a month. Enoch never says that a day is 18 hours. And he never says that an hour is an hour and 20 minutes or whatever that would be. His perspective also is not one of standing still in this whole thing. Understand that. He's still, he's watching the sun, but he's following its course around the entire earth here. That's what he's trying to do. He's not standing in one place, seeing the sun go overhead. So that's not the perspective from which this is written. The second Hebrew month, called Ziph in Scripture, if you see another one on the modern Jewish calendar, that's Babylonian. Don't use it. It's basically mid-April to about mid-May, verse 11. And the sun rises from that fourth portal and sets in the fourth and returns to the fifth portal of the east 30 mornings. So 30 mornings, it rises in the fourth, sets in the fourth, and then on the 30th, it changes. So that was Abib. Now it changes further north to the next portal at the end of the month. And this is consistent with what Enoch shows regularly, most months, not all, but most, and rises from it and sets in the fifth portal. So this month, the second month, rises in the fifth portal, sets in the fifth portal. Last month, it was rising in the fourth portal, further south. Understand that, and setting there as well. And then the day becomes longer by 2 parts and amounts to 11 parts, and the night becomes shorter and amounts to 7 parts. Again, if you looked at this and you said, oh, well, but, I live in Australia, a lot of our viewers do, and, well, wait a minute, this doesn't work. Well, no, you're in the southern hemisphere. It does work because Enoch's not talking about the perspective of standing in one spot here. He's talking about the course of the sun, right? How the sun travels. That's all he's talking about here. This is consistent, however, with the coming summer in the north, which is where he's heading here, because it went north to the next set of gates. Obviously, in the southern hemisphere, that's going to be, winter. It's going to be closer to the winter. So that makes perfect sense in observation if we just understand Enoch's perspective here. That's all. The third Hebrew month, unnamed in Scripture, we don't use the Babylonian one, or at least we shouldn't. That has nothing to do with the Bible. Yes, there are times when Scripture uses the Babylonian name in reference to a king of Persia or a king of Babylon, which is appropriate. That does not then change the Bible calendar and start using, especially something like Tammuz, the sun god. Yeah, right. What a crazy name for modern Jews to use in utter ignorance. But anyway, mid-May to mid-June, roughly, on the Roman calendar. Verse 13, and it returns to the east and enters into the sixth portal. So now it's rising further north in the sixth portal, and rises and sets in the sixth portal. So rise, set, both sixth portal, 1 and 30 mornings. Well, we're in the third month. What do? Every 3 months, we add a day at the end. Now we're at 31. On account of its sign. That's what the intercalary day is. It is a sign, according to Enoch. But he treats it separately, even though, of course, it's a part of the calendar, and that's how we arrive at 364 days as opposed to 360. 4 months have 31 days. The rest have 30. Verse 14. On that day, the day becomes longer than the night, and the day becomes double the night, and the day becomes 12 parts, and the night is shortened and becomes 6 parts. What we know for sure, whether we can even do this math or not, which is highly complex to even try, and I don't know that anybody will ever get it, but what we know for sure is this is May, June, and in the north, hey, we're entering the summer months. We're getting close to it. So as we're approaching summer, of course, the day goes longer and the nights get shorter. We know this. I mean, it's easy to test, but we're going to test that more next. Now, the fourth Hebrew month, also unnamed in Scripture, just the fourth month, mid-June to mid-July, roughly, on the Roman calendar, 30 days. As all of these months, by the way, every single day begins when? At sunrise. Never based on the moon. Period. If Enoch then goes and says that elsewhere, then he just doesn't agree with himself, right? So no, you can't go into the moon part and find that. And you won't, actually. We're going to cover the moon, so we'll get there. Verse 15, and the sun mounts up to make the day shorter and the night longer, and the sun returns to the east and enters into the sixth portal and rises from it, sets 30 mornings. Okay, so we've got now the sixth portal and 16. And when 30 mornings are accomplished, the day decreases by exactly 1 part and becomes 11 parts, and the night 7. The fifth Hebrew month, also unnamed, mid-July to mid-August, 30 days. Verse 17. And the sun goes forth from that sixth portal in the west and goes to the east and rises in the fifth portal. So that was the previous month, the fourth month there in the sixth. Now we're in the fifth portal for 30 mornings and sets in the west again in the fifth western portal. So rises in the fifth, sets in the fifth for that whole month, 30 days. Verse 18, on that day, the day decreases by 2 parts and amounts to 10 parts, and the night to 8 parts. The sixth Hebrew month, again unnamed, just sixth month, mid-August to mid-September, 31 days now, because we're in the sixth month, we're in the second quarter at the end, where we add another intercalary day at the end. So the days again, right there, 31, and we're back to the fourth portal again now. Verse 19. And the sun goes forth from that fifth portal and sets in the fifth portal of the west and rises. Okay, so that was the previous month. Understand that's how Enoch writes this. He's a very smart guy. He's brilliant. And it's amazing how detailed this is. And rises in the fourth portal for 130 mornings, 31 days. On account of its sign, again, the intercalary day at the end of each quarter, where we add 1 more day, and sets in the west. On that day, the day is equalized with the night. This is the fall equinox, where day and night are equal, the true one. Many charts online, don't actually follow the true equinox. So it's easy to get sucked into that, and you look it up, and then you try to make calculations mathematically based on that, and they don't work. And then some even try to use that to ridicule the Book of Enoch, but it's all nonsense. It's not actually the true fall equinox, number one. Number two, you need to know the perspective from which Enoch wrote. Where did he live? What would he be talking about in terms of area? And becomes of equal length, and the night amounts to 9 parts, and the day to 9 parts, equal. Again, they're 12 hours of daylight, 12 hours of sunlight. Of night. So there's no doubt that would be the case, but because the return journey, again, which would be calculated proportionately, isn't added in this calculation. The seventh Hebrew month. Now, these are the fall feasts. This is one of the most important months of the year. You have Abib. Of course, you have Shavuot, which takes place in what they call Sivan, which was really just the third month. There's no Sivan in Scripture. And also, this one is 30 days. The name of the 7th month is there in Scripture. It's called Ethanim, never the Babylonian name. Now, we now go to the 3rd portal. This is September, October on the Roman calendar, if you're following through. Verse 21, and the sun rises from that portal and sets in the west and returns to the east. Okay, so again, that's from the previous month. And rises 30 mornings in the 3rd portal and sets in the west in the 3rd portal. So we're going to rise in the 3rd, set in the 3rd this particular month. And on that day, the night becomes longer than the day, which is consistent with what we see in certain hemispheres. Again, if you're in the southern hemisphere, you're the opposite, but that's no surprise. We all know this. And night becomes longer than night, and day shorter than day, till the 30th morning, and the night amounts exactly to 10 parts, and the day to 8 parts. The 8th Hebrew month of Bul, October to November, mid of each month. 30 days, all beginning at sunrise, yet again, consistent through this whole narrative and this whole chapter, and really the whole book of Enoch, and the whole of Scripture, and the book of Jubilees as well, which all are Scripture. Verse 23, and the sun rises from that 3rd portal and sets in the 3rd portal in the west and returns to the east. Now, again, that was the previous month we saw already, Ethanim. Now, move on to the next. And for 30 mornings rises in the 2nd portal in the east. So now we're in the 2nd portal. Again, changing the last day of Ethanim, the previous month. Enoch is very consistent here. And in like manner, sets in the 2nd portal in the west. So rise in the 2nd, set in the 2nd of the heaven. Verse 24, and on that day, the night amounts to 11 parts, and the day to 7 parts. Again, that is only from the east to west gates. Enoch does not record the return journey time frame in that math. Yet we know there's another 6 hours there for the total for the sun and moon in their courses, and they would remain proportionately to the rest of that calculation. The day is never 18 hours, nor 18 pods of time, but 18 hours plus the return of the 6 hours between the sun and the moon. Yes, this can get complex if they try to make it so, yet this is pretty straightforward, and it's not hard to understand. We can figure this out. We get that, sometimes that can be confusing, but it doesn't have to be. If you just take the view that, number one, Enoch doesn't disagree with himself. That's a big thing. Many do with Scripture. They have, Yahusha disagreeing with himself so many times in the modern church. You can't count it on your fingers and toes, and your whole family's fingers and toes, and many thousands more for that matter. However, let's keep the proper perspective here. Again, we are going to get to the moon. Don't worry. We are going to test this some in the next video as well. And one thing here we'll mention, notice the distance becomes greater, but variables such as the speed of the sun's course are just not recorded here. Enoch doesn't say that. He probably didn't have a speedometer, so he couldn't quite measure the speed of the sun, nor does he have to. It would be really, it'd be nice to have it, but we don't need it. The data here is awesome as it is. So again, try to debate that as a point, which isn't really a point at all. Be muted. Our channel, our rules, we just ain't playing along with debate in ignorance, especially not for things that we cover in the video, and we find people trying to debate things that, well, number one, we don't even say, and number two, we've covered and already obliterated the debate many times over with many scriptures, so they just didn't watch. So clear the sun is powered to propel at different speeds, and it is infused with different amounts of fire each season, burning hotter at times, cooler at times. Enoch accounts for this. The 9th Hebrew month, again unnamed in Scripture, November to December, middle of the month, 31 days, because we're in the 9th month, the 3rd quarter, as we add an intercalary day at the end of the quarter again. Enoch is consistent. Verse 25, and the sun rises. Whoa, that starts the day yet again, doesn't it? On that day from the second portal and sets in the west in the second portal and returns to the east. Okay, so that was actually the previous. Into the first portal now for 1 and 30 mornings. So 31 days. That was Bull the previous month before. Now we're into the first portal and 31 days. And sets in the first portal, so it's consistent, in the west of the heaven. It shifts to the first portal now for this entire month. Verse 26, and on that day the night becomes longer and amounts to the double of the day, and the night amounts exactly to 12 parts and the day to 6. Again, this is November, December. We're getting into winter now, and this makes perfect sense. Again, in the northern hemisphere, of course. Again, only from the east to west gates. The return trip is not here and must be added in number mathematically. The 10th Hebrew month, we're getting through this, unnamed. It's mid-December through mid-January, basically. Again, needs to be reconciled with the Roman calendar. 30 days total. Verse 27, and the sun has therewith traversed the divisions of his orbit. It is completed all 6 gates at this point on both sides. So all the gates it's entered. So they're all represented, and that's all he's saying here. The east and the west, which we have observed at this point, if you followed all the way through. And turns again on those divisions of his orbit. So basically he's going to head back in the other direction. And enters that portal, meaning north-south, not east-west. It always rises in the east, sets in the west. Of course, I shouldn't need to mention that, but I know for some I do. Or there'd be a blog about how we don't know, right? Idiot. Anyway, and enters that portal 30 mornings and sets also in the west opposite to it. So there is no migration to a different portal this particular month, and that happens some, but that's the rarity on this whole calendar. So that's in the beginning, as it remains the first portal for the rising and the setting. Verse 28, and on that night has the night decreased in length by a 9th part, and night has become 11 parts, and the day 7 parts. The 11th Hebrew month, again unnamed, mid-January to mid-February, 30 days. Verse 29. And the sun has returned and entered into the second portal in the east. Now it was in the first, moved again, and returns on those his divisions of his orbit. So he turned back around in the other direction, north to south, or really south to north, for 30 mornings, rising and setting. And on that day the night decreases in length, and the night amounts to 10 parts, and the day to 8. Again, plus the return journey proportionately for a total of 24 hours, as must be in order for Enoch to get to 364 days. There's no other way to make that work, folks. Another 30 days where the sun rises first at the start of the month and day. And then the 12th month of the year, the final month of the year, the culmination of the year, basically mid-February to mid-March, which brings us back to Abib in about mid-March. Again, it changes on the Roman calendar. The Bible never starts in the year in January. Just doesn't. It also, there's no such thing as Rosh Hashanah in the fall. That's stupid. It's always been stupid. The word Rosh Hashanah is only in the Bible one time, referring to Abib as the head of the year, which is always the head of the year and never changed. That's the Babylonian calendar that they try to insert, just as they do with the lunar part of it. So, frankly, the day never starts, the day, the week, month, or year on the moon. It cannot. It doesn't work. And you've just seen Enoch tell you this over, 364 days. So it's kind of hard to conclude anything else. But always the sun, You can see that here, 364 times. Enoch is clear about that, and he really can't be taken out of context. Never once does he ever allude to the day beginning with the moon. That's Babylonian nonsense from the synagogue of Satan. Let's stop listening to the rabbis. Let's follow the words of Yahushua. He told us who they are and what they represent. They turn Torah against Torah, even in this respect. Now, that's Mark 7:9, if you haven't read it. Now, Enoch is adding the one intercalary day here at the end of this month, once again, because it's the 12th month. He'll tell you that this concludes the year at 364 days, never 354 days. He will do that math under the moon to show you that it's wrong, an error, and that the year comes in 10 days too soon. And he even shows you over 2 years and 3 years and 5 years and I think 8 years. I mean, he keeps going to show you the math to say, hello, see how far off this gets? It's so obvious. And by the way, Jubilees rebukes this in the very same vein, in the very same way, with the very same math. So it's 364 days to a year. The year follows the sun, never the moon. The moon has a purpose. It is a measure for some things, but it is not a measure for days, weeks, months, or years, Sabbaths of the years, or even Jubilees. Verse 31. And on that day the sun rises from that portal and sets in the west and returns to the east and rises in the third portal for 1:30 morning. So now we've shifted to the third portal and sets in the west of the heaven. And on that day the night decreases and amounts to 9 parts, and the day to 9 parts, consistent with science, consistent with what we know. Again, the perspective of Enoch is not in the southern hemisphere. He's not down in Australia, so don't try to put him there. He's not there. And the night is equal to the day, and the year is exactly as to its days, 364. That's it. Got that? 364 days is a year, period. That is the Bible calendar, according to Enoch and according to Jubilees, both. Really, according to the whole of Scripture, and we've gone through many such verses and really proven that out at this point. Read Rest, the Case for Sabbath, if you have not. Available free in ebook at restsabbath.org. There's a whole chapter on this concept. Verse 33, and the length of the day and of the night and the shortness of the day and of the night arise through the course of the sun. These distinctions are made. They are separated literally. So the moon doesn't even determine the length of the night. Get that? The sun does in its rising and setting, because it is the measure for that, not the moon. Understand that. Enoch is clear. The sun is the measure, the timekeeper. That's what's important here for the starting of the year, the month, the day, here throughout this passage. He doesn't mention the week, but that's obvious, because if the day starts at sunrise, the week starts at sunrise. And if the month starts at sunrise, the week starts at sunrise. I mean, you can't really come to that by any other conclusion. And, in testing the moon is off even for the week. 22 of 52 Sabbaths last year when we tested that, which is ridiculous. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. Verse 34, so it comes that its course becomes daily longer, and its course nightly shorter. It's all about the sun, folks. The moon has a purpose, but it's not the timekeeper for the start of the day, week, month, or year. It cannot be, and this is why you will find Enoch will rebuke it following, for just as Jubilees does, outright. Really, so does the whole of Scripture. Again, even Messiah's death and resurrection still entrench the same exact timeline. Apply this timeline to that. Go back and read it. Go back and read how on earth could he rise on the Sabbath and yet just before sunrise, and then it was the first day at sunrise. How does that work? Well, it works if the day changes at sunrise. Duh. I mean, it's not real hard. It's just that many scholars don't want to believe that. They would rather believe the Pharisees. Well, they can have their Pharisees. Go enjoy your Pharisees. Put them on a pedestal. Enjoy that. Those of us who want the truth and want to know what the Bible really says, well, we reject that. On the last day of the 12th month, we have the spring equinox, equal day and equal night. Okay, 12 hours, 12 hours. However, not 12 hours and 30 minutes. No, 12 hours and 12 hours, very, very closely associated. This, when we discover it truly, is the measure for the end of the year, and the new year starts, Abib 1, the next day, not on the equinox, but the day after. That's what Enoch says. Now, on modern charts, this is assumed the same Roman day every year by many, which is false scientifically, unfortunately. And they do this. They love to confuse us and deceive us. So you'll find all kinds of data out there, especially on different websites, which is not accurate. It's not that it's terrible for them to say the equinox is always the 20th of of March every year, but it's not. It doesn't work. That's not true when you look at the amount of daylight and night for the days in particular. It shifts on the Roman calendar, which is the key. Enoch also warns. They're using faulty data from the start, and it's hard to then reconcile. And then again, some will then turn on Enoch and blame him for faulty data that they've been using, being a false litmus test. Enoch also warns, though, and remember this, in the last days, the time will change, in fact. We may not be able to even reconcile this today based on our modern data. Might not. They also would need to understand Enoch's perspective. This is huge. I mean, you just go and grab an equinox. Well, the equinox isn't the same everywhere on Earth. That doesn't work. It moves depending, in date or at least time and hours, depending on where you are on Earth, for that matter. So you have to know exactly what area he would be referencing as his perspective. Now, likely, and again, we don't know 100%, though likely, he would use the Philippines, which is ancient Avila, where Noah tells us in 1 Enoch, the righteous generations from Adam lived. Many use their own, but don't pretend that represents Enoch. It doesn't. There's a whole lot of junk out there regarding this, and you can discern for yourself. Is this video perfection? We don't aim for perfection here, folks. We strive for excellence, and we ain't perfect. We're human, and we always will be. Do we make mistakes? Yeah. Well, you find a video every now and then where, on that one slide, they made a math error. Well, just throw out everything they ever said then, right? Isn't that what we're supposed to do? That's pretty stupid, but there are bloggers out there who will tell you that's what you need to do. Dumb. There's a whole lot of junk, there's no doubt. Now, we'll get into this a little further, though, in the next video. We're not going to vet this completely here. Verse 35, and this is the law and the course of the sun, and his return, as often as he returns 60 times, and rises, i.e. the great luminary, which is named the sun forever and ever. He called it that in the beginning. He calls it again the great luminary in the end. Why? Well, that has always been and will always be the measure for the day, week, month, and year. That's why. And let's continue. Verse 36, and that which thus rises is the great luminary, and is so named according to its appearance, according as Yahuwah commanded. Let's look at Genesis 1:14, or you can read all three verses here, but it's always repeated the same, that the sun is the greater light, or the greater luminary. Same thing. It was created first, and during the day, the daytime, not the night. So to say the sun was created at night is about as inept as any scholar could be, yet there are some that try to say that. It requires a profound ignorance of basic logic. I mean, when they can't even think and represent a sentence in basic logic, just throw out what they say. That's Rabbi Babel, never Bible. To ignore that Yahuwah created light on day one first, and during what he calls day or daytime, is again some of the dumbest rabbi babble out there, and we've seen this in order to justify their lunar occult Babylonian calendar, which fails every test of Scripture. It always has. We have conducted many ourselves, and you can see that in our videos. Moses read and used and quoted 1st Enoch. They are on the same page, both representing the ancient accounts from the heavenly tablets recorded by the angel of the presence in heaven since the creation. In their eyewitness accounts, he saw this stuff. The only thing he didn't see was before the angels were created, which was day 1. So there's a little bit of time that he didn't see, but he was able to get that from Yahuwah pretty easily, I'm sure. Then we go to the book of Jubilees, which concurs with Enoch, and Enoch fully affirms, all in Jubilees really, as it is the origin of that work by Moses labeled and used as Torah by the temple priest, just not by the Pharisees, who are impertinent. You don't follow them for Bible canon. That is illiterate. Yahusha said they turned Torah against Torah. Why would we follow them? It's Mark 7:9 again. In which we have a Pharisee Bible today in modern times. Yes, even the KJV. Time to remedy that. Chapter 2, verse 9. And Elohim appointed the sun to be a great sign on the earth for days, and for Sabbaths, and for months, and for feasts, because even the feast that started sunset, you still need the sun to get there, or you'd be 10 days too soon every year, and you'd screw up the feast. That's a fact. Now, and for years, and for Sabbaths of years, and for Jubilees. I mean, could it be any clearer? Oh, he is, and for all seasons of the years, and we even tested that. And yes, seasons begin with the sun, not with the moon, according to the Farmer's Almanac. So that is science. Now that covers everything, folks. The moon is not the measure for any of these things. It comes in handy on especially the 3 feasts, which begin and count at sundown as atonement. In fact, is an evening concept throughout the whole of Scripture. And Passover, unleavened bread, was an event that began in the evening period. So it wouldn't start at sunrise when it started in the evening. And in fact, when you're counting the 7 days of unleavened bread, which we do in our video, the date changes, proving that the day begins at sunrise, never sunset. Just the feast does, but that can't change the day. Of course not. That's nonsensical. Atonement is very laughable when they select in fraud only the one passage where atonement is the 10th of Ethanim, but see, they miss the other passage in Leviticus, which is pretty inept for any scholar, which actually lays out the detail of the hours in which to observe. And they change the day at sunrise in Scripture. Moses does that. It begins on the 9th of Ethanim in the evening at sunset, and it ends on the 10th in the evening at sunset, meaning the calendar just changed. So that 24 hours is not the same day. It changed at sunrise, not sunset. So these actually are perfect examples of what is definitely not based on the moon. Watch answers on Sabbath, parts 1 and 2 for those. Again, debate without watching those here. Be muted. We spend too much time proving things out for someone to come in and try to agitate and say, oh, nuh-uh. Well, your nuh-uh means nothing here. If you can prove it wrong, go to those videos, review the actual position, and go ahead and try to prove it wrong. We debate all the time. We'll crush it, but go ahead and try. Our channel, our rules, no debate in ignorance. Verse 37. As he rises, so he sets, and decreases not, and rests not. See, the sun doesn't rest, but runs day and night. Got that? Enoch says the sun doesn't rest. It doesn't stop. It goes day and night. But it's that return journey that many are missing. Which means Enoch propagates a 24-hour day. That's what it means. Even in his calculation, again, for 364 days, it requires 24 hours, never 18. That never works. And he never says it. It's misunderstood by some, so I think we've cleared that up at this point. And his light is 7-fold brighter, check this out, than that of the moon. Now that's observable science, and we'll get there too in the next video some. But as regards size, they are both equal. Whoa! What? Wait a minute, the sun and the moon are the same size? Well, that's not what they tell us in modern scientism, is it? Where supposedly the sun is 90 million miles away, which is one of the most unscientific things we've ever heard, and we're going to deal with that a little bit in the next video. Definitively, we can trace where the sun is, at least generally, and it can't be anywhere near that far away. Nonsense. Absolute. It also is not the center of the solar system. That's also a cult. Absolutely. Worshiping the sun is as the center of the solar system has been the ancient religion all along. Did you know that? I mean, absolutely, we can trace that back to reliefs on the palace walls in Babylon, in the age of Nimrod even. And we know that Cainam found the occult doctrine regarding the sun, moon, and stars, the luminaries, in worship as well there. So they are called the Sumerian tablets. Sorry, not Samaritan, that's different, though the Samaritans came from Samaria and follow the same doctrines. How about that? Though not the reason for that name. That was named by the lost tribes of the north. Nothing to do with that. But still, those are easy to mix up. But the Sumerian tablets, Nephilim records of a false religion, never science in any sense. Never. But we'll get there. And that's what's being applied in modern scientism because it is a religion, a false occult religion, and we're buying it in our classrooms today. Again, try to debate that before we even run that video. Be muted. Our channel, our rules. Timekeeping began as far as the watch on day 4, which is why the calendars found in Qumran Bethabara from the actual true temple priests begin the year on Wednesday, the 4th day, not Sunday, the 1st day. That's how it works. That's when the watch was created. Thus, the calendar begins. But time was still being kept before in terms of days, because we have day 1, 2, and 3 of creation. But the sun wasn't created yet until day 4, and that's why it begins then. However, the sun is the measure for the day, week, month, year. The creation of the sun was in the daytime, not the evening, and that's super obvious in reading Genesis 1. However, the days began to be counted on day 1 of creation, which even has day first and then night, or evening and morning, which is always the dark hours before sunrise. That word in Hebrew, boker, is not daylight morning. It's only the dark hours before it, and it even means sunrise, because it ends at sunrise. It means tomorrow, because that's when tomorrow comes, at sunrise. It has several meanings that lead right to that same exact. It never means all of daylight, ever, and cannot. So, again, it's very obviously, stupid scholarship to say otherwise, yet we hear this all the time. It's amazing. Now, we cover this in great detail in a chapter of Rest, the Case for Sabbath, available free in ebook at restsabbath.org. Or you can watch part 6A through G of our Sabbath series, where we vet the day beginning. It is always sunrise, no matter how you test it. If you're truly testing it and not injecting a paradigm where you've already drawn a conclusion before you test it, and that's what they do. Enoch just told us so 364 times every day of the year, and the year, month, and day always start at sunrise, according to him. You just read it. Scripture massively agrees with that, and there has never been a true debate, just a strong delusion forced down our throats. No longer. Those propagating the moon have not tested it, period, and aren't even able to read Genesis 1 clearly. This is obliterated at this point. Watch the videos, read the book, and know, because you can. Then, prove it for yourself. Test it. It vets. The moon never does. It just doesn't. So, Now we have a chart of Enoch's observation of the sun's course. The sun moves, not the earth. That's the way it is. That's what the great prophet saw, and NASA, well, they've never seen otherwise. Nor do they ever prove things. They just theorize, create computer animations, and things that are not photographs and not actual video, where they basically inject their paradigm however they want, and then treat it as fact, even though many of the things unravel very quickly as foolish, not scientific at all. You're going to have to research this for yourself. It's a huge topic we can't cover in the series because you aren't going to hear it from scoffers calling themselves scholars, nor academics who are really cronies of the ancient occult religion. Let's just call a spade a spade. They'll even hail some ancient occultist and say, "See, he was right all along." Yeah, because you used his basis for your occult theory based in nothing scientific. You didn't even come up with an original theory, for that matter, but repeated the ancient lie. Wow, how ridiculous modern scientism proves. Now, we do intend to get into some of that, but not too much in this series. Of course, we are not scientists. Thank Yahuwah, we aren't that stupid. We just test and prove things, and they lead to where they lead. They don't test, but are afraid to challenge. And some have even come into comments and said, well, scientists have even said they're not trying to prove anything. Well, then what the heck are they doing? Are they scientists? Scientists that don't prove? That's stupid. That is an illiterate paradigm. They have no purpose. Fire them all. Just get rid of them. We don't need any of them. I mean, that's the opposite of being a scientist. We can all know these things, not half know. We aren't done yet, by the way. Let's test this. Then let's test the moon and see what Enoch says. And again, review parts 6A through G of our Sabbath series, which really lays this out in detail with tons of scripture, as well as parts 1 and 2 of Answers on the Sabbath, which cover atonement and unleavened bread. Or read Rest, the Case for Sabbath, and you will find we fully test this. Others have not, and claim a position they haven't even ever entrenched, because they don't prove anything. We have almost 450 videos on this channel, one for every day of the year, many just as profound, with some 50 or so in Tagalog for Filipinos, and now 6 in Spanish to start. We also have been setting up subtitles for 20-plus languages for most of our videos. Don't forget to like and subscribe and click the bell for notifications of new uploads. Join our email list as YouTube fails to notify often, and we will notify you ourselves at thegodculture.com. Just fill in the pop-up there. We now have alternative platforms for videos on Rumble, Odyssey, and Utreon, and our new podcast is also available for all of our videos as well. All links in the description box. Friend us on Facebook at The God Culture, _space, original. If you prefer an alternative, we now have Parler and Gab. Links below. We have 6 books published internationally, being read in over 100 countries, with a new release now available. The first book of Enoch, the oldest book in history, and we prove it right there in the introduction. Read it. We also have now launched Ophir Philippines Coffee Table Book in the US, Canada, UK, and many overseas markets on Amazon. And it's available in hardcover or softcover there. Additionally, we launched the Book of Jubilees, the Torah calendar, with color maps and interior, as so many had requested overseas. We already had that with color maps in the Philippines, but that too is available in hardcover or softcover, both in color or also in black and white, if you wish. All books, including Solomon's Treasure, are now free in eBook. Yes, folks, our content is free. And don't forget, the Book of Enoch, First Enoch, is also available in hardcover color, softcover color, and black and white color on Amazon. But in the Philippines, it's just black and white. That's all we can offer at this time. Just go to ophirinstitute.com for all the links for your area for all of our books. More coming soon. Thank you for watching. Now, always remember, prove all things for yourself. Yah bless. to everyone.